welcome to the Your Place Next Door podcast. My name is Sharif. This is Jeffrey. This is Daphne. Today, we're going to be talking everything mental health. That's what we do, raising awareness, educating, knowledge is power. So, we're just going to dive straight into this today. Guest, Daphne, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Daphne. I am a psychology major and business administration minor. I studied psychology after figuring out other life choices. I didn't start off majoring in psychology. I started off majoring in music. And I realized that I wanted to learn more about the human mind and what makes people act the way they act, how they act the way they act, and think the way they think. So I decided just to go for psychology, and there I am there.
Nice. What kind of music were you into?
So I'm a choral singer. So I perform in a group called Cantare Houston, and we perform choral music around Houston areas. We've sang in the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. We sang in Felk Church in downtown. It can be from different languages and things like that. A lot of choral music. It's really pretty, and it's a great show. It's a great group.
Nice. Okay, so mental health. Okay, so this is a topic that we're really passionate about, and it's hard to say because a lot of people they struggle with this in this day and age. And we spoke about it on previous podcasts where years and years ago, like when I was in school, maybe 15, 16, 17 years ago, it wasn't such a big topic. There wasn't so much awareness on it and stuff like that. But these days, it seems to be that a lot of people are suffering, but, everyone's like, it's closed off. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, it's hard for somebody to, like, be able to help someone, Now, I want to just get your opinions on this thing, yeah? What do you think are the leading factors towards, a mental illness?
I think mental illness can take a lot of different forms. Yeah. I think it starts from one trauma to the next, and the trauma can be from anything. Your parents, peer pressure, teachers, fear of change. Like, it can really start anytime, anywhere, any age, in any person. And obviously it's different all around the world. I think a lot of people get scared, and I think a lot of it has to do with change, something they're not used to, something that's different. And I think it starts to morph, and everybody's mental illness sometimes isn't really the same. How someone has, it seems like someone would have the same mental issues as another person, but they handle it completely different. I think it just stems from, honestly, I think it stems from change. People just go through so many different things. There's billions of people in the world, and not one person has always the same trigger as another person. And if they have the same trigger, they might not take it the same way as the next person. Mm-hmm. So,
what about you, Jeff? What do you think?
Well, essentially, like adding on to what Daphne said, how people are sometimes scared, there's also a stigma of where some people believe that mental health or like just bringing awareness to mental health issues can cause them to be weak compared to other individuals, and they oftentimes don't seek the help they need. But essentially, they really need to open up if they really want to get better in that sense. It's not really a form of, let's say, of giving in to a weakness or anything. If anything, it's just helping them become stronger as a person and an individual.
Okay, so see, the way I look at it is we're living in very advanced ages, advanced time, like everything is made easier, everything is made, it's more complicated. And it goes for a lot of things, like the whole social media thing we talked about. Like, what are your perceptions on the whole social media thing? Like, people use it as a digital outlet as opposed to, as business owners, we would use it as a tool, and people use it as a platform, as a curtain to hide behind, kind of, what I mean? And then people see, like, for example, you look at, your favorite musicians' Instagram, you only see like the good days. Do you know what I mean? And it's it's a it's a perception of what success should be. Do you know what I mean? And you know, I really believe that social media has a huge effect on people's mental health, because you know, people are just looking at their phones all day, and they're just looking at other people's lives, and you know, not getting the things that they need to be doing themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a sort of like self-entertainment to get lost in somebody else's world of what they show you. I agree. A huge percentage of the time you only really see the best outcome, you know, but you don't get to see the process or the progress it gets to there. So like the hard work that's put in it, you only see like the final product. So like, say I currently work at an anime shop. I'm the brand ambassador, but you know, I come into contact with a lot of cosplayers, and you don't always see the mess that when you create your own cosplay, you don't see the mess in the room of them creating their own props, cutting, measuring, sanding, ironing, like trying on and different things like that. For those really incredible cosplayers, all you see is like the really cool photo that comes at the end of it. Yeah. But this person has slaved for ages, days and days, trying to get like the best look to show you. And then you as a viewer on social media, you're like, that's awesome, I want to do that. And then they kind of get lost in that kind of world. So when they follow a bunch of people, I think they also follow people that they wish they could be. A lot of people follow, you know, on different social medias. You have musical artists, you have other types of entertainers, even on TikTok, you know, you can, they range so much in what type of content people post. You might follow this person because their humor is similar to yours. You find their content hilarious. Or you might follow this fashion designer because you love their style, but you think you'd like to aspire to be that person. But, you know, it's easier to sit on a couch and scroll through social media at a life that you think you could have, but then sometimes in actuality, you're just sitting and looking and perceiving this person's living their best life. It looks great, and then you forget that when you come back into the world, it's like, so that's why a lot of people, I think, get stuck on social media. It's easy. Like sometimes you go on TikTok, you don't even realize it, and 3 hours go by. We're just scrolling, which is, you know, fine. But say like you have other responsibilities, work and school, like work from career, school work, other responsibilities. You kind of, when you get lost like that, it becomes kind of like a trance, and you get addicted to it, because you know, then you're like laying down for like 3 hours and you kind of completely forget, and then 3 hours goes by and all the things that you were supposed to do or you need to do, you're like
yeah, we spoke about this as well, how, you know, in the early days of the whole social media, you know, coming out and whatnot, you know, they weren't making any money in the early days, so it was more of you know, laying a path out. But in recent times, obviously, you know, they've had to monetize and all of that stuff. And, you know, we talked about how the refresh button on, what was it, Snapchat and Instagram?
Yeah, and TikTok. Essentially, it's like it releases your dopamine and serotonin.
Yeah, it's like made to like copy a slot machine arm. You know, it's that buzz of like, oh, something is coming. Do you know what I mean?
Chance. What am I going to expect next on my For You
like
page?
The pull down thing is like, okay, something is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And not only that, like, everyone's a target for attention. Mm-hmm. So it's like all these advertisers. It's like, you know, my wife was saying the other day, something about like, she's on Facebook and she can see all these nice shoes or these nice bags. And I was like, yeah, because you're searching for it online, and they just follow you around the internet saying, oh, buy it, it's 20% off, buy it. You know what I mean? And it's just like everyone's a target for attention. And these social media platforms are like, there is some very clever people working for these like huge corporations. And, you know, they design it in a way to keep people's session timer. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, I'm a YouTuber as well, and I'm trying to work on ways to keep people on the platform myself, you know? So, they watch one video and then they move on to the next and the next. And I mean, that's the game. But, it's down to, each person where they have to understand their limits, And like, I really, like, look at myself and how to, keep a strong mental, like a strong mentality. And what I found is you don't need more, you need less. You know what I mean? In terms of like information or just anything, food, like social media, you need less of it. Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk. Have you read that? Okay, so that's a really good book. And, it's all about how to get towards mental clarity, And it's not a case of, oh, you need extra things. It's no, you need to take away a lot of things, and that's what it all boils down to, is removing a lot of the rubbish out of your life, the social media. Like, this is the information age where, at any given time, you can pick up your phone and you can find the answer to anything within seconds. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and essentially nowadays everyone just is so reliable towards their phones or just towards the internet in general. They're forgetting how to do like simple tasks, and like they neglect to like even like honestly put their time and effort into like learning the proper skills they need to develop. But like we said earlier, there's nothing wrong with like using your phone or having social media or anything. It's just anything you do, you must have a limit towards it.
Yeah.
And moving on to the next topic, how essentially a lot of people have the stigma where if you study something, you have to go through that profession in the end. And like Daphne had mentioned earlier, how she originally started going into music and then she went into psychology and now she's working for like an anime shop and whatnot. Do you feel that just because you studied something, in the end you will reach to that like desired goal everyone expects you to get to?
So I made the decision to change. So music has always been a part of my life. I think it's a part of everybody's life. You hear it everywhere. As a singer, I chose music, and to be honest, I chose it because I needed to choose something. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I needed to choose something for college. And it was something I was interested in. But halfway through, I realized, I'm always people watching. I love observing. I love learning about people. So I thought, a psychologist isn't like compared to like an accountant or like a business owner or things like they're not, or a nurse or a doctor. Like, they're not as heavily abundant, I guess is the best word. But I still really wanted to learn. And yes, that drive is not always in a lot of people. I chose to choose psychology. I chose to learn different theories and how people think and stuff like that. The classic, like. But I think there is a stigma when you are a psychology major, is people think that you're just judging them at some point. Like, they no longer think that you're unbiased. They're just going to think you're going to categorize them in one of these theories. In real life, yeah. If you wanted to put a theory on top of how you think this person acts, sure. But how often are you going to go up to a psychology major and be like, and really be able to talk without that bias being there? In terms of my career, honestly, so many of my friends and so many of my colleagues, there are people who are meant for school and people who just are not into school. Like, it's the study, it's the drive, it's the career path. And for me, being from a minority family with a single mother, I chose to choose my own rather than going for like the high paying profession route, definitely. Which is a change by itself. And choosing that started to help me mentally be more okay with my own decisions, because I chose to do something different. I chose to stand out and choose something for myself. I enjoyed it. I loved it, and I still love it today. And I think psychology can be applied to everywhere. I think a lot of people, honestly, in terms of social media, I think it's changed the percent. Like, you can type in and search up anything you want to know. Anything you want to know. Yeah, but you type in a high-paying job, but classically, are you going to be happy at a high-paying job?
Exactly.
Say, you've been told you should be an accountant. They work a certain amount of hours. Their pay is high because they're highly sought after. Everybody needs to do taxes. Okay, but do you want to be an accountant? Is that really what you want to be? I know, like, as a child, you dream, like, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be, and, like, over the years, as you grow up, it changes.
Definitely.
But tying into social media, when you see somebody have a cool life and something that you've always wanted to be when you're younger, like an astronaut, but the steps to get there are a bit more
Rigorous than you
gruesome than you think, and it's hard work. You're training to be an astronaut. It's not a simple task. I think people start getting lost. I started out music, then I went to psychology. I chose business administration because if I was going to join the workforce, I think business administration is also a great thing to have in your belt and have knowledge for. But I don't think people should subject themselves to that one major that they chose.
Yeah.
Because that's why people change majors all the time. Is halfway through learning, they realize, this is not for me. And it's okay. If it's not for you, it's not for you. You tried. Unfortunately, it took money to test that out. And it starts to weigh heavily mentally when it feels like when you start over, it's like, ugh, I have to start over. All this hard work I've put into, let's say, 2 years into it's rough. But instead, I think what people need is, even nowadays, and not just about school, they need to
turn that switch off.
Yeah. Don't be afraid. I think too many people are, once again, people are scared of change all the time. I really think this world that we live in is way too hard on us for us to be hard on ourselves. That's why I chose Japanese animation has always been a part of my life. So now my work feels, it's fun. Like, sometimes I don't really think of it as work. I enjoy doing it. Hours go by so fast. But of course it took steps to get here in a lot of different types of jobs that took a while to get here, but not a lot of people have that in them to make these changing steps. I didn't start off thinking I was going to be in an anime shop, and working for a company. I started out thinking I was going to be a psychologist, but things change, and I'm very happy that I have strong people around me to build me, and I think people just shouldn't be afraid of change, really. I think you could start off in being a doctor and specializing in this one thing, or you can be an architect specializing in this one thing, and halfway through, if you really don't like it, choose something else. If you choose somewhere halfway through, if this seemed like more of your interest, I know it sucks, monetarily, but I think you should go for it. And then there are those who school is just not for them, and that's okay. It happens. But people join the workforce
and they find ways to make it work.
And however you can make it work. Again, this world is hard enough as it is. You really you shouldn't add to any more mental problems that you may think you have.
And another key thing is, I feel like a lot of people are under the pressure that they don't have enough time.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going to take this right now, is the lack of patience everyone has these days, and the instant gratification everyone needs. Do you know what I mean? And people don't understand that, when I was 10 years ago, when I was 18, I was thinking, man, I got to be made by the time I'm 25. And now I'm 28. I'm looking back at myself. I was like, you had no idea of anything at that age. Do you know what I mean? And it's again, everyone's in a rush. Nobody understands that it's okay to, do a bunch of trial and error throughout your whole 20s. You know what I mean? You got time. Take it easy. Focus a bit. You
Not
can
not
you can like
yeah.
you can make mistakes.
Not
do you know what I
even
mean?
just like at age 20. It's like some high school to early college students, like 17, 16, 14, 13.
Yeah.
They're already constantly trying to figure out what they want to do. Because I feel like a lot of it stems from how the education system nowadays is essentially forcing you to like choose a profession,
Yeah.
and they tend to like force you to go into like a profession just because you fit under a certain stigma. I remember back when I was in high school where they gave us this like little like survey exam testing where it tests our personality and whatnot, and from there it was like, hey, you should go into engineering or you should become this and this and that just because your personality fits this. But I think it's just not the right pathway, or like essentially the right style of teaching that the school system should really be implementing nowadays. But it's because not only is it gonna like leave an impression in these students, because there's some students where they just follow instructions. They hear something, they see something, they just go like towards that direction, and essentially at the end of the day they might not be happy because of that.
Yeah, 100%. And but like everything's constantly evolving. Changing and moving forward. Like this time 3 years ago, like who knew anything about NFTs? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's just like it's constantly moving forward. So you can make a good living out of flipping NFTs or selling NFTs or whatever. And it's like like I said, 3 years ago you can do that. So it's like what you're saying about the sort of cut and paste like methods. It's no good. Like I left school when I was 15. I did take some time to go back because I thought, I had to get the basic, here they call it a GED. Well, that's the high school. I'm from the UK, so over there it's called the GCSEs. Okay, so it's like basic high school qualifications, and I thought I need that, otherwise I'm never gonna get a job. I always had the mentality of, move forward, move forward, move forward. Even though I grew up around some rough environments and all of that kind of stuff, and I battled mental health issues. For some years, do you know what I mean? Drugs, substance abuse, all of that kind of stuff. And, it's like that mentality of you got to keep moving forward. And I was into music, in my early years from, I'd say about 15 till about 25, something like that, or 26, where, I had this whole thing of, yeah, I'm a rap, yeah, I'm a make it, yeah, I'm going to do this, yeah, I'm going to do that. Do you know what I mean? And then, like, things change. I fell out of love with it. It became a chore almost to write a song. And, I just figured out, like, it wasn't doing anything, like, I didn't have the understanding of the business. I had an understanding of the business side of it, but, what I thought would work didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, I took on, to the next step, first business, trucking company. Was doing okay. Next was a restaurant, did okay. Came out here, private security, blew up way faster than I thought it would. Do you know what I mean? So it's like it's completely different. Do you know what I mean? Like industries, and it's like I would never have guessed that I would be in America, 7-figure private security business like 5 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if I decided that I'd stick with one thing that I didn't enjoy, and it's not fun running a restaurant or working in a restaurant. It's like I work well under pressure, but it's I don't want to say it's a mundane task because things change, but going in every day doing the same thing, it's I can't live like that. Do you know what I mean? But no, so you're in school, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm currently in school.
Yeah. So what are you studying?
So I'm currently under public health and communications and business. I'm also doing minors in biology as well. But yeah, like you said, that was like how everything changed over time, how you guys also changed. And essentially that wasn't the field I was originally going to go in. I originally was going to major in biology.
Mm-hmm.
But literally the day of orientation, something in my mind clicked, and I was like, maybe let me try something different. Let me be different from like everyone else who's trying to go to med school. And
What was the driving factor behind your choice?
essentially, it's just I wanted to be different. I wanted to stand out compared to the other students I was going to be competing against just to get into medical school. And even now, I'm currently changing my pathway as well. Instead of going into MD, I'm actually going to go into PA, because I want... PA essentially is physician's associates. Okay. They used to be called a physician's assistant. Okay. But essentially, it's pretty much healthcare as well. Mm-hmm. But instead of having to put in as much time that I wanted to, it's a little less time, but it's essentially similar to what my original plan was.
And, like, it's going to sound kind of blunt, but
mm-hmm.
Why are you going to school? You have a business,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So why are you going to school?
The whole reason why I am going into school is because I feel like I fit in the whole like scenario, and I feel like I want to continue pursuing these educations. Okay. And like Daphne said earlier, school is not for everyone. Mm-hmm. I personally felt like school is for me, and like I am constantly trying to learn. I love learning. Okay. And like I'm constantly stepping out of my comfort zone and doing professions or learning activities or doing hobbies that do not relate to each other in any way, form, or fashion. Like you said, I own a business. I'm starting off a clothing line and apparel line with a buddy of mine for targeting the car community. On top of that, I'm working for a public school as a public relations and communications intern. And my career is like essentially, I want to go into medical field and healthcare, but my hobbies are all engineering. So essentially, it's at the end of the day, it's just you got to find out what you like to do, what you are good at, and eventually you might as well turn it into a career if you have to.
I think people it's unfortunate, but a lot of businesses turn it into like the school, like, and it's good that school is for you. Again, it's not for everybody, but I think people nowadays, it's kind of like, here's my piece of paper that I paid for to prove that I went to school for this, so I'm qualified for this. But honestly, what that piece of paper shows, you've learned, but what that piece of paper shows is that you went to school, took these specialized courses, but your personality, your work ethic, things like that might not always fit with whatever job that. And then when you pay so much for this degree, now you're like, what do I do? I'm stuck with this degree now because I paid for it. My diploma is sitting at home, and she's gonna kill me. My diploma is sitting at home on, like, it's not even displayed. It's just on a towel in my room. How much did that cost you to get? The towel or the diploma? The diploma itself is probably around $50. Mm-hmm. I chose a different route. I didn't go into 4-year university immediately. Mm-hmm. I started out going to community college after high school. Mm-hmm. I did 18 hours every semester for 2 years, and I worked part-time, and for the first 2 years it was busy, and this was all for, I grew up with a loving childhood, and then changes such as, divorce happens. I grew, instead of, I was a child then, and I decided that instead of wallowing, my biggest goal is just to help my mother, who's already working hard for me, to ease her life a little bit. So if I could pay for any part of my school, I would do that. So I went, community college, there's also a stigma on community college.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe less now than it was back then when I was in college, but people wouldn't credit community college for the education of a 4-year college or an Ivy League.
Yeah. But even now, I noticed that stigma with just 4 years university in general. Mm-hmm. It's getting hard for you to transfer credits from a community college into a 4-year university because they don't view those credits as a legitimate credit enough for you to even like.
And it's sad to see that somebody who's just the same going to a school and learning and taking this course,
putting in the effort and time,
gets less credit than somebody who's going to a four-year university. And to be honest, I think that the stigma against community college shouldn't be there. It's actually great. I mean, there's all types of ages, all types of people, nationalities. It's to help them get started in the college process. If you didn't want to go right into a four-year, it helps them get started. You can take as many courses as you'd like. You can take whatever courses that you'd like. Yes, you have to kind of stick to a major, but there are elective courses. But, full-time moms, full-time workers, but people who wanted to try and continue their degree, take the time to do online school, which is another stigma. People also don't credit online schools as well. They think that if you don't start off at a four-year college,
What's the difference between a four-year and a community college?
So a community college essentially just gives you your associate's degree. It gives you your two years. Some people go into specialty schools, so schools such as welding or culinary, etc., stuff like that. And they get their degree, they come out, and they go into blue collar work. Okay. And then there's the program for where you get your associate's degree to just fulfill your prereqs for the major you want to go into and transfer into a four-year university.
Okay.
Which is the route I chose. Yeah, I chose to take all my basics, the ones that are you can take in any university.
Yeah, chemistry, biology.
The very simple
math,
fundamentals,
stuff.
and then transfer those credits, and those credits get taken from the amount of hours it takes you to complete your chosen major. So 18 hours every semester is a lot. Full-time is 12 hours. I chose to take more. Not part of it was I felt like I should rush myself, not because I hated it, but because I had the time. I was going to community college at a cheaper rate than going to a four-year college to get my basics out the way, and then transferred over a lot of credits and was able to complete my psychology major. When I switched from community college to a four-year college, I switched to a psychology major and was able to graduate at a timely manner. I dropped to 15, really it's just taking one less course. I dropped to 15 hours a semester for 2 years and got my degree, but my final year I continued to work. I was a research assistant for a clinical psychologist. I was a bartender at a restaurant. I was also doing volunteer work at Texas Children's. I had a lot on my plate. But every step of that was, the bartending was to make a living. And I loved my experience. I loved the people I got to meet. I learned a lot. Then Texas Children's, I love children. It is hard to, honestly, it is hard to work. You don't want the children to be there. They don't want to be there. Their parents don't want them to be there. It takes a lot of mental prowess in yourself to keep up a positive face. And the people that I've met at Texas Children's, they're amazing. They try their best to keep these children's spirits alive, but they're in there for whatever unfortunate reason. And then clinical psychology was for my own degree. This was for me to try to see if this was the route I wanted to take, plus the Texas Children's. And then when I got out of it, I full-time bartended. And then from there, I went into, and I was there for 5 years. I was there for a very long time, but I enjoyed my experience. And I don't think that you should limit yourself because, like you're still in school because you enjoy learning. Yeah, thus, with social media, yes, you can just type in something and learn if you're curious about anything and get it within seconds. Same thing. I learned to do a lot of random things even though I was out of college. I learned how to do permanent makeup. I was interested in wine, so I tested and became a level 1 somm. There's so many random things that you could do. If you love basketball, go join a basketball team, a local basketball team, Whatever time and motivation you have, I think that a lot of people start to get lazy, and I think it's the unmotivation. And unfortunately, that sucks because the more motivated you are with your life and changes and learning things, and you don't have to learn how to be a plumber, how to be an accountant. You can learn any little thing you want to learn how to do. You want to learn glass blowing, like little things like that you can learn by yourself. But that drive, that mental drive to want to learn these new things and take the time to do it, I think a lot of people lack. So they feel boring, bland, and that continues to go down on the drive list, and then mental problems start coming up, like you're not enough, like you're boring, like no one likes you, like you're scared to talk, to change. Yeah. Yes, exhaustion is a major thing. And honestly, it's a lot to do with mental exhaustion. I think, once again, the world is hard on us as it is, and expectations of a person living in America with the opportunities that you get, yes, there are a lot of opportunities. But I think that that expectation starts to weigh heavily. It's like you expect something big. Like someone expects something big out of you. You should make something big out of yourself. But then when a person's completely confused as to what route they want to take is when it gets hard.
And tying back to like how you said there's always someone expecting you to do something, or you have the like you have the mindset that someone's expecting you to turn out a certain way. Do you really feel like a person should just dictate their whole like lifestyle, or just their whole like mental state or mental mind just to fulfill another person's goal or dreams? Because I personally know, like I used to think like that. So I used to think that I needed to go into school because that's what my parents wanted. I wanted to give them, like you, I wanted to give them a better life because they were giving so much for me. But there was a moment in time where I sat down and I was like, I'm not, at the end of the day, I'm doing this for me as well. Yeah. It's not only just I want to give them a better life, but if I go the route they wanted me to go into, would I have been happy? Because originally, like, this would be surprising, especially coming from like an Asian background and whatnot. My dad wanted me to go into theater, and my mom wanted me to go into law. Mm-hmm. But I went a completely different route, and I wanted to go into the medical field. Mm-hmm. But there is a point in time where I'm like, oh shit, if I'm not gonna get into like the medical field, or if I don't really fulfill my goal, I'm not only gonna let them down, but I'm gonna let everyone else who saw me go my separate route down. But essentially, it's like, does it really matter what other people think about you at the end of the day?
Yes and no. I don't believe that it's as easy as people say, like, don't listen to them, just do whatever you want. True, yes, but depending on who that advice is coming from, it's hard to ignore your parents. It's true.
Yeah, because no, my parents, my mom wanted me to become a pilot, and the only one fear I have in this world is planes. Like, I would rather die than go on another plane. Now, my dad, he was always like, whatever you want to do, I'm behind you. And that's good, but it's also bad, because without the correct, like, direction, you'll take it too easy, especially when you're younger. Mm-hmm. And, my first college course, I did go to college to study sound production. Mm-hmm. Little to no use for me, I was thinking I want to be a rapper. Why am I studying how to engineer music? Like, I learned that on the side, like how you were saying earlier about if you want to learn something, you can go online and, just proactively just practice it. And I was doing that. But, as far as like someone telling you, or like parents saying, oh no, you should go to school, you should become a doctor, this and that. I mean, parents only want the best thing for you. Do you know what I mean? And they'll like, because let's face it, you said it, it's a tough life. Do you know what I mean? And to be able just to get to a level of stability is almost a huge fight in itself. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you don't like really grind to beat the system, I know quite a lot of people who are, lower working class, and life's a struggle. Yeah. And it's, partly financial, partly like their habits and stuff like that, because anyone can make it out or whatever. No, but my point is it's like it's like you said, yes and no. Do you know what I mean? It's good, but as a parent, I would say to my kid, I wouldn't be like, oh, you need to go do this and this. It would be, what do you want to do, and like, what do you enjoy, and which way can you make it work from there? Do you know what I mean?
What's your plan?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like we all have a dream, we all have a goal, but what is the plan? Do you know what I mean? And you do have to be selfish sometimes, to keep yourself in a healthy state. It's like you can't just do things what other people want you to do, and I don't agree with that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Keeping up with someone's expectation of you is exhausting.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things that drain you, because if you feel like you don't accomplish it, then it was all for nothing. Like, you're a failure, which no one should ever feel. So when someone tries to look for like the ultimate end goal or like the ultimate success, like, how do you consider yourself to be successful now? To be honest, how do you calculate how far you've come to be this successful person? And to be honest, I think people should calculate every little thing that they did well as a success. It can be like just mini successes, like mini accomplishments to make you successful. I think, honestly, if you're living in this world doing something you love, regardless of whatever monetary value it may have, you're happy, you enjoy it, I think that you made a win. It means the little steps you took to change, all those little successful things to take you to change to where you're at now, and if you're happy, I think that value is completely irreplaceable, and I think that person's really strong. It's tough to be strong. It's tough to, especially with our parents. I think what I learned from mine was her biggest fear was that because she grew up in a village and she had to come here, and she works hard every single day to be able to provide for my brother and I. The notion that I wouldn't be, because she struggled for finances. She lived in a village, all this money it's scary. Suddenly you have a car payment, suddenly you have a house payment, suddenly you have insurances, sales, things like that when you own a business. To work from the ground up for her, I think her fear was that struggling financially is the worst thing for your child, and that fear leads them to push for careers that are much more high paying. It's like you go through a bit more, and it's much more rigorous, but it's more like the monetary payout. And for my mother in particular, it took a while, but she started to see the change in me when I started to make little changes in my life to finally be happy with what I'm doing. It was not an easy thing, and it took years. But I think after a while, and your parents want what's the best for you, when they see that you're happy and content doing what you like, I think eventually as you get older, that fear for their little baby child starts to ease as they see you become your type of successful person. But again, it's not an easy process. It's a lot of steps, but they all start with you. So if you're feeling the lack of motivation, if you're feeling the lack of interest, I think the root of the problem always starts with the self. Something happened, and it could be something as little as somebody telling you, like, it sounds awful, but if someone's like, oh yeah, I want to be an astronaut one day, I'm like, that's stupid. Something as little as that. Someone saying something as little as that, and you're like, why?
It can crush you.
Yeah, it sucks, especially when, things like I want to be an astronaut are ambiguous,
Yeah, definitely.
They're super ambitious. And if you want to be it, great. It's hard, but if you could be what you want to be, great. But the obstacles from it, not just a person, like courses that drain you, the money that it takes to go into these degrees. You wish you could just learn this online. You wish you could just type in how to be an astronaut, take courses on it, and you can. Like, there's some things where, like, if you want to learn how to code, you can just buy a course, like, on JavaScript and learn that. or Photoshop or things like that.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to ask, because I never got myself into any colleges that required money, this and that. So having that debt, did you pay it off as you go along, or once you leave, it's kind of hanging there?
I applied for financial aid. I had a single mother. I applied for financial aid, and thankfully it covered my tuition for community college for 2 years, and then for 4-year university it covered a good half every semester.
Okay, so
And, yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have any like big debts coming out?
No, but I think that was a thing that I grew up with. Asians tend not to like debt.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but debt is it's in America. Debt is very normal to
Good
have.
debt. It's good debt and bad debt. You know?
Yeah, it is, and it's debt to raise for your education is, depending on your purpose for it, is normal. You know, it's money. Education is money, and unfortunately, not a lot of people have a lot to spare, so they work. That's the community college aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. What were you?
For me, I was fortunate enough to get scholarships for my university.
Okay.
So
My
my tuition was paid off, essentially. It's just I personally wouldn't say I was smart in any means. It was just how we said we tried different things, with that in mind, like just back in high school, I did like over 20 different extracurricular activities. I did different programs. I was in leadership programs and stuff. My SAT score was like average. I got like a 1300. Like that was like my final SAT score, and that was like barely making the cut. And I wouldn't by any means say I'm smart or anything. It's just I stepped out of my comfort zone. My resume just looked really impressive because I tried different things before I really settled down and thought about like maybe I really want to get into this profession. And I'm fortunate enough to get the scholarship and like not have to worry about that debt or anything. But like we said, anything can change. It's just a form of payoff, essentially.
Yeah, because I think, well, yeah, you're right in that. Like, if you get the value out of it, then okay. But someone who comes out of college and doesn't use their diploma or whatever, they have this huge debt over their head. It's kind of setting them up for failure. Do you know what I mean?
Essentially.
Unless they have the good financial habits. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people don't have, especially the financial literacy. From what I've learned, in the recent years, that not a lot of people have that financial literacy of, how to save, how to, keep debt down, and how to manage like your ratios and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I can see how, someone would be set up to, have to stay at this job because, I've got this debt, and eventually they get married and they have those kids, and it's like, I can't make any changes because everything is, it's a cash flow where, everything comes in, it's paycheck to paycheck.
And tying back to the whole social media thing too, like a lot of these influencers have like these materialistic goods that everyone strives to want to get as well. Or I personally know some people, like some peers, who threw away tuition money just to buy an expensive LV bag or like a designer bag or something,
Right.
instead of paying for their education. Or they just, instead of paying for food, they would like buy something else and sacrifice of it.
Yeah, and let's be honest, like all of these kind of things, they are for other people to look at you. Do you know what I mean? Because
that momentary look of like happiness that you might have, like I have an LB bag, like here's it on my shoulder. But in actuality,
But
if
what's
you were to
inside
have like
the
a
bag?
billboard behind
Yeah.
you of the things that need to be worked on before you got an LV bag, would it probably, yikes.
And that's the thing. It's just a case of, some people out there, they got plenty of money where they can afford to just do whatever. Do you know what I mean? But I like, for the regular person, it is for other people to,
Give
to
them
see-
validation.
Yeah, and it's like, some kind of perception, like, hey, I got this. Like, do you know what I mean?
you gotta respect me or something.
Yeah.
and like essentially it's not a good mindset to have, and that just it's eventually it will come back around and bite you in the butt, especially like
because everyone's like keeping up appearances and trying to fit in or trying to look good, and
Expectations, they're
Yeah.
killer.
literally,
Mhm.
and people don't understand that they like happiness is found within. Do you know what I mean? It's not something that anyone else can give you or anything. I've been broke and I've had money, and like it don't change how you feel. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Unfortunately, though, when somebody goes from, not having money to having like money, it gets their head. Like they change the type of person they are now. It like gets right to their head, and unfortunately, those people, when they change like that, it's hard to bring them back down. It's like, why would I ever want to go back down to the mindset of, but instead of thinking of, you need to chill out, you want to think differently about that money. Instead, be more modest, be, humble that you have the money that you've always wanted, but don't be an asshole. It gets to a lot of people's head, like, and it is very common to live paycheck by paycheck.
Especially in such a developing country, like how everything is
rent,
constantly like
insurances,
and not only that,
rent.
it's like it goes to another thing. It's like you start off with a company, you make $50,000 a year. You get that. You get a car and you get a house, and then you get bumped up to 70,000. So you think, oh, I can upgrade the car now, so the payment gets bigger. Do you know what I mean? And it's like it's a constant. They get to 120,000. Okay, they've got a really nice car and they've got all these things, and they go on these nice holidays, and it's just like, it's like you're still paycheck to paycheck because more money, more.
It's a
things.
dangerous mindset to have. It's
Yeah.
because like now that you have more money, it means I can afford more expensive things. Doesn't mean you should buy the more expensive things. It's not, if you have a completely functional car that you like, yes, people like, who have the money, like collect cars, collect whatever, have a big mansion, and these are things that again are perceived on social media like, this guy has the life, this guy's doing what I like, he has all the money. Everything just seems so easy and so perfect if you had money.
but the process and the sacrifices you have to get.
Ton of sacrifices.
Yeah.
A ton of sacrifices.
And did they remain a good person?
Yeah.
It's hard to remain a humble person when it does get to your head. And I'm not saying like people who have money, like,
truly happy though?
yeah. I mean, if you are, awesome on you. You literally got everything you wanted, and great on you. But it's, as a person spectating from the side, I made more money in my job before this than I do in the current. But I wouldn't trade my current job for that. I'm very happy. Again, it doesn't feel like work. It took work to get here, but I'm not saying that. I just have to think financially smarter. But mentally, I'm happy. I'm free. I don't feel burdened. I have a small social media presence, and I'm very thankful for the people who support me, my friends, fans, things like that. But I think that if you were to always follow a social media, as a creator, if you were to always try to keep up that lifestyle, that appearance, that everything is pristine, that everything in my life is awesome and polished, that's also exhausting. Not even as a viewer, but as a content creator as well. It's like, here I'm modeling photos, like modeling merchandise, modeling on cars and things like that. Full glam all the time. And then some people get terrified to show their bare face. And I think that's a dangerous mindset. It's like, no, because people will think I'm ugly. People will think
they won't like me for my
it's
true
like
self.
I didn't even notice all of your flaws and the flaws that you were trying to keep away from people to post on your social media. If people pick at that, mentally it picks at you too. So everything that I fear in myself, I really didn't want you to see. But that goes for real life as well. It doesn't have to just do with, here's my photo of me modeling on a car. It has to do with, if somebody picks at me for flaws that I really didn't want somebody to notice, it makes me feel weak, and it keeps picking at me until I feel like I'm ugly, or I'm not enough, or I wish I had these features that somebody else has. And that's just a spiral of nightmares that you don't want to go down. I think people really should work on changing themselves to become the person that they want to be. They want to be happy, so long as the goal is reachable to them and they're physically and mentally able to reach for it. Again, it is a drive, it is a push, it is motivation that doesn't just come from outside sources, but it really comes from you. If you don't want to do it, I can't tell you anything, because nobody in your life is going to spoon feed or baby you into things that you want to do. And
nobody's carrying you in this life.
It's rough. And those who, like us who have sat here, we've worked to get where we are. We're all very different, but I mean, no one's judging anybody for the steps that they had to take to become this person, right? So trying to be, if you're afraid of what somebody's going to think of you, you're setting yourself up for failure. It sucks, and it's a double-edged sword, especially on social media presence. If you're afraid of, you'll always have somebody that doesn't like you for whatever reason. You're not always going to please everybody. But if you go into anything that you do thinking you're going to please every single person, you're going to be exhausted. You're not, and there's way too many people in the world for you to care about what this tiny percentage of the people are going to say. So keep the ones that are supportive, that understand, that are positive around you, because, again, you're hard enough on yourself. You tried it. You don't know if it's going to work. But the extra support you see and the positive reinforcement that you see is liberating in a sense. People are just way too hard on themselves, I think. Don't be afraid of change. Do what you love. Really do what you love. And if you're confused or too many options or have never, there are people who are reclusive. Like, they don't speak ever about their problems or what they really think, because they fear no one will understand or people will judge them for what they think. And that is incredibly dangerous for the individual. You shouldn't feel like you're alone. Even if somebody has never been in your situation, they could understand your situation. And even if their advice seems plain or mundane or like generic, like, just do what you love,
Yeah, I did a podcast with a mindset perception coach, and he was saying that when you're in the fight, it's hard to see like which plays you can take, so like that outside source of information, someone like an outside perspective on, it can, like, he made the reference towards coaches, like a football coach, like the player can't see that, what play needs to be made. The coach on the outside on the lines is watching, okay, he's there, so you need to run this way. Do you know what I mean? It's a similar thing to that.
Essentially, you should like really just look back towards what you have done and what you can improve on.
Yeah, 100%.
Guidance helps.
Yeah,
yes,
like
it does.
Mentors and stuff like that. Like, you don't need I think, when was it? Like 3 years ago, I was looking for an actual person to mentor me. And then, I kind of figured, it's not that easy to just get somebody to want to give you any time or whatever. Yeah, so it's like, you got to pick some people who, like some authors or stuff like that, and like, look at, what they're doing, or, study what they're like trying to educate and get across, you know what I mean? And, so that's one thing. Now, one thing I want to ask you is, what do you do on a day-to-day basis, like, to keep your mental health, like, in good order?
For me?
Yeah.
I try to sleep early, but I enjoy reading comics, so I'll read a little bit before bed. And I noticed that doing something that puts you at ease before bed, for me, and it might be different, doing something that puts you at ease before bed, like some nighttime routine that somebody might have. When you ease your mind before bed and you rest well, the next morning feels better, or it feels like already a good start to the day. I'll wake up, make myself a cup of coffee, come into work, and I start my day. I enjoy, like, little things that I do for my work that I like is I enjoy, like, writing down the things that I need to do today. And then it makes me feel nice to see, like, a check mark next to each one of these little steps because I can be forgetful. That's why I know I know myself to do that. So I'll write down little steps. And for me, at the end of the day, it makes me feel like I accomplished a lot by being able to see this little check mark next to all of the steps I need to do today. That to me makes a successful work day. That makes me happy. And I go home. I make myself a snack of whatever I want to eat. I sit down and relax and breathe. And I think that is the biggest thing, is breathe. You know, you're not always going to have these glorious days at work, or, you know, something might happen to you personally that makes you like anxious, or, you know, like puts you in a bad mood for the day, and then it could affect your entire day. So I think it's important to do steps. For me, I actively try to be in a positive mindset around people. I try to have people who are of positive mindsets around me. It feels nice and lightening, and when you're around people, work life or personal life, your friends, your family, that share the same mindset, but also easy conversation match your personality type, it also feels nice. And that's what I have here at work, and it's great. Those things make me relax. But again, not every day is going to be peachy, and it's either from work or from yourself. When you're anxious, it's really hard to come down sometimes, and it depends on the person and how they handle anxiety.
Yeah, like I noticed myself that, you know, I'll go through phases where the anxiety is kind of picking up, and I got to really get it in check, like, yo, what you doing wrong, and this kind of stuff, like what's going wrong. So, you know, things like when I'm on the treadmill, my mind is so clear, you know, it's like it's a place for me where I can just, my mind gets empty and I don't have to think about anything. And another thing as well is like the diet, you know, when I notice I'm eating a lot of rubbish, you don't feel good, and it affects you in the head as well. And the same thing, if I go through a day of like, you know, I've got a whole bunch of employees, and my phone, some days it doesn't stop, and I notice that, like, yo, you know, it's just problem after problem, and your head's all over the place. And, you know, so I had someone to delegate that task to, or, you know, just break down the workload and stuff like that. But I think, like, not mental health, because some things are, I'm not a doctor or anything, but like, what would you say, like a disorder, a personality disorder compared to mental health. Now, mental health is something that you can change on your own. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people find it hard because taking that initial step to making changes, things like, you know, working out and stuff like that, I think that's one of the most beneficial things. Meditation as well, but it's that momentum and traction of actually starting it, because when you start meditating, you won't feel anything in the start, but close to a week in, it'll almost have the reverse effect. And then you gotta push past that, and then you really feel the benefits of it. And like you were saying about when you come into work, you empty your mind on paper. I think like journaling, or, you know, putting some of your mind on paper is really good. And then again, what you're saying about the checklist, you know, okay, accomplish that, and it's like successes throughout the day. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I think that's really good. But myself, I'm constantly reviewing, like, you know, there's so much out there that gets to people, do you know what I mean? And, you know, causes like anxiety. I think that's one of the biggest problems, is anxiety, and depression. And I think, if, you know, you got to maintain a balance, maintaining a balance and understanding that, you know, some things will make you feel bad, but understanding what does, and then figuring out, like, okay, how can you minimize that? Because I've learned to accept that as a part of life. And, you know, it can be, like, I don't want to say suppressed, but it can be, you know, you can take care of it. Do you know what I mean? You can beat it. It's just a case of taking the right steps. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. What about you? Like, how are you keeping yourself, like, mentally clear and all of that kind of stuff? What do you do?
For me, the best way for me, like, to like wind down essentially is just when I am at the gym, because as a college student, like you guys said, like, just constantly being busy and stuff in general, it's gonna drive a toll on you. And like, since a lot of college students, I feel like a lot of students in general can relate, we constantly can't wind down. We're always constantly staying up till like 1 or 2 a.m. studying and whatnot, essentially. But my best way to wind down or just take a breather or a moment like for me to relax a bit is just going to gym and working out, to even just like doing my favorite hobbies like working on my car, or just like, you know, hang out with a bunch of buddies, just getting together and just go get some boba, or just find a different type of scenery just to change your environment up a little bit and just expose yourself to different things to
And being
help you grow.
present as
Yeah.
well. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you're doing something that you enjoy, it's like
Yeah.
you're gonna be in the moment. Like, you know, if something happens outside, everyone first thing they do is pick up the phone and, you know what I mean, start chasing.
A lot of
Yeah.
people take. A lot of people's like breathers are different. Yeah,
Yeah,
it could be hanging out with your friends. It could be some alone time to yourself, reading a book, taking a bath, going to the gym, riding a bike. All your all those little hobbies or little things that you enjoy. Each little thing helps with the anxiety kind of mellow just a little bit. Of course, there are a lot of factors that go into anxiety, and for anxiety in particular, I think it's anxiety and depression. Anxiety, when it's at its peak, I think a lot of people get stuck of the worst case scenario. Like anxiety's at its peak, your heart rate's going, and you're like, what else could possibly happen? What other failures could possibly happen from this? And that mindset is probably one of the hardest things to ever get yourself out of if you suffer from anxiety. It's the pessimism. You just can't see the positive note that could possibly happen, or what else could go wrong, or everything's going wrong. My life is a mess. When in actuality, it's not. But, you know, these phrases like that, little things like that, just cause anxiety to pile on top of each other. When you think something else is going to go horribly wrong, what else can go horribly wrong? I did this wrong. This is messed up now. Like, things like that keep piling up, and then the stress that's built up in you, you'll just crack. And thus the breather is so important. I think that people who suffer from anxiety, I think everybody suffers from some sort of anxiety. It could be as small as like nerves, like to massive anxiety attacks. And it's hard to be able to soothe someone who has a huge anxiety disorder, because there's just almost too many factors sometimes that keep, and like it could be mental trauma, it could be from something else that you just never know about. But the level of anxiety that people have varies, and the way that people handle like that, is very, very different. And it's hard to appease or help everyone. And sometimes even if, like, as a close friend, you try to give advice to someone who has massive anxiety, it might not even help. You know, it's just like they don't even hear you, because in their head space, everything's going wrong. Thus, and I've learned this, meeting a bunch of different people, is instead of telling them some generic line, I just tell them to breathe. Go do whatever it is you need to do, or what you do to get your mind off of things. Is play a game, take a bath, go on a bike, listen to booming music where it drowns out whatever it is. Just breathe. Breathe first.
That's what it is that voice in your head just not
It just
stopping.
doesn't. Yeah, it's relentless, and it's awful, and it's unfortunately nothing you can do about it, because that voice has always been there. It just gets louder on some days, and it gets even louder with continuous things that are happening that are not what you want, like are not ideal. But anybody who suffers from anxiety, or even the smallest case of nerves, stage fright, fear of failure, fear of being hated, whatever it is, breathe. Just breathe. Do whatever it is that makes you calm. Breathe. Take your time. Tell people that you need a break. Like, I think people are scared to tell people they need to break, to breathe, to take a break. You shouldn't. And people should understand that not everybody is as strong as the next person that's next to them. And it took me a really long time to be as strong as I am, from a bunch of different life experiences, but I was right there, and I'm still there. There are times when, you know, I find that when I start having like really bad anxiety, for me, I spiral, which is the classic, like, worst case scenarios, like, oh my God, I'm hated or whatever like that, I'd spiral really bad until I tell myself to stop or somebody tells me to stop. Like, I don't catch it. I just stay in this one headspace, and then I realize I need to breathe. I need to stop. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the motto is just breathe.
And once again, we would like to thank you so much for doing this podcast with us.
Of course.
And we would like to say, please like, subscribe, comment.
Instagram and TikTok, Daphne Deer, DAPHNEDEAR.
Okay, everything will be linked in the description box. Hope you guys enjoyed this. We will be back with more. As always, your place next door.